Who is Pope Leo XIV? Is he truly an American pope, or is he a Peruvian pope, or both? And what is his background? Does he plan to continue the legacy of Pope Leo XIII? Does he plan to continue the legacy of the Second Vatican Council and Pope Francis? Will Pope Leo XIV continue the Catholic emphasis on social justice introduced by Rerum Novarum? Will he support DEI and Black Lives Matter's theologies? Does Pope Leo XIV plan to continue Pope Francis's preferential option for the poor? Or will he emphasize traditional displays of piety, or both? Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. At the end of our talk, we'll discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint script we uploaded to SlideShare, which includes illustrations. Our sister blog includes footnotes, and both include our Amazon book links. Who is Pope Leo XIV? Although the American media has celebrated him as the first American-born pope, Peruvians also claim him as one of their own, as he is a naturalized citizen of Peru. Born in Chicago with a mixed Latin American and Creole heritage, he attended high school and college in Chicago, earned a doctorate in canon law in Rome, and joined the Augustinian Order. He served as a missionary priest in Peru for over a decade, and then was selected prior general overseeing the Order of St. Augustine for another decade, and served as a bishop in Peru for 8 years, and in 2023 was appointed by Pope Francis as prefect of the dicastery of bishops in Rome, and was made cardinal, conferring with Pope Francis often on the appointment of bishops and cardinals, and he was chosen to continue the theologies of Pope Francis. Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost chose the name of Pope Leo XIV in honor of the memories of Pope Leo XIII. And who is Pope Leo XIII? He reigned for a lengthy pontificate of 25 years, about a century ago, and committed the Catholic Church to a doctrine of social justice in his groundbreaking encyclical Rerum Novarum. He supported the rights of workers to a fair wage, union membership, and safe working conditions, affirming the dignity of the poor and working classes, while opposing the excesses of both radical socialism, which is not the same as socialism today, and capitalism. While supporting social justice and concern for the impoverished working class, he also encouraged spiritual and conservative reforms, such as promoting the Rosary and Mariology, or the veneration of the Virgin Mary. This encyclical was affirmed to be a central part of the Catholic spiritual identity by Pope Pius XI's Quadragesimo Anno on his 40th anniversary in 1931, and was reaffirmed by further encyclicals by Pope John XXIII in 1961, who called the Second Vatican Council into session, and Pope John Paul II's Santissimos Annus on its 100th anniversary. Bishop Prevost was close to Pope Francis, and he is committed to furthering his agenda and legacy. We previously reflected on Pope Francis's autobiography and his encyclicals Gaudet et Exsultate on the call to holiness in today's world, and Fratelli Tutti on fraternity and social friendship. And we'll soon reflect on his early encyclical Evangelii Gaudium on the proclamation of the gospel in today's world that Pope Leo XIV stated explicitly that he supported and would follow. Now, as Pope, did Francis seek dialogue rather than accomplishments? There are indeed popes known for their accomplishments, such as when Pope John XXIII called the Second Vatican Council. But this accomplishment led to dialogue that is still roiling the Church 60 years later. So how can a pope or anyone proclaim that everyone must follow their vision of moral truth? What can we expect from the papacy of Pope Leo XIV? Why not allow this new pope to speak for himself? We will quote extended excerpts from his first pronouncements, including his first Mass the first Friday he was Pope, his address to his fellow cardinals, plus his message from his first Sunday Mass. Now, if you want to read his complete address, our blog has footnotes from our sources. Plus, our blog will include in italics what we excluded from the script of this YouTube video. Shortly after his election, Pope Leo XIV delivered a Friday homily. Jesus showed us a model of human holiness that we can all imitate, together with the promise of an eternal destiny that transcends all our limits and abilities. Peter, however, makes his profession of faith in reply to a specific question. Who do people say that the Son of Man is? The question is not insignificant. It concerns an essential aspect of our ministry, namely the world in which we live, with its limitations and its potential, its questions and its convictions. Who do people say that the Son of Man is? If we reflect on the scene we are considering, we might find two possible answers, which characterize two different attitudes. Pope Leo XIV continues. First, there is the world's response. Matthew tells us that this conversation between Jesus and his disciples takes place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, filled with luxurious palaces, but is also a place of cruel power plays and the scene of betrayals and infidelity. This setting speaks to us of a world that considers Jesus a completely insignificant person, at best someone with an unusual and striking way of speaking and acting. And so, once his presence becomes irksome because of his demands for honesty and his stern moral requirements, this world will not hesitate to reject and eliminate him. How much of this is a subtle reference to current conditions, to the excesses of the Trump administration in particular? Does his mention of luxurious palaces bring to mind the ostentatiously gaudy Trump Tower in New York, or his Mar-a-Lago country club? When he discusses cruel power plays, scenes of betrayals and infidelity, does he have in mind the infamous Atlantic article that speculates that in the Trump administration's treatment of the poor and immigrants, that the cruelty is the point? Should Christians be known for their cruelty, or should Christians be known for their compassion? Should we be cruel in our dealings with minorities, the poverty-stricken, and the immigrant, or should we err on the side of compassion? To err on the side of compassion was the belief of the founder of Promise Keepers, Coach McCartney. And we pray that those currently leading this important ministry do not stray from these ideals. Pope Leo XIV continues. Then there is the other possible response to Jesus' question, that of ordinary people. For them, the Nazarene Jesus is not a charlatan, but an upright man, one who has courage, one who speaks well and says the right things, like other great prophets in the history of Israel. That is why they follow him, at least for as long as they can do so without too much risk or inconvenience. Yet to them he is only a man, and therefore, in times of danger, during his passion, they too abandon him and depart disappointed. Again, relating this to current events, could Donald Trump be considered a charlatan and con man? Is Trump the opposite of the upright man with courage, who speaks well and says the right things? Or is Trump corrupting the compassion in Christians' hearts, replacing it with needless cruelty? Is Trump corrupting Christianity itself in the hearts of many believers? Russell Moore, previously a prominent leader of the Southern Baptist Convention and current editor of Christianity Today, tells us, multiple pastors have told me essentially the same story about quoting the Sermon on the Mount parenthetically in their preaching, to turn the other cheek, and afterwards have someone come up to him and ask, "Where did you get these liberal talking points?" And what was alarming to me is that most of these scenarios, when the pastor would say, "I am literally quoting Jesus Christ," the response would not be, as you would expect, "I apologize." Instead, the response would be, "But yes, that doesn't work anymore. That's weak." And when we get to the point where the teachings of Jesus himself are subversive to us, then we are in a crisis. And what is the relevance of Christianity today? Pope Leo XIV notes, what is striking about these two attitudes is their relevance today. They embody notions that we could easily find on the lips of many men and women in our time, even if, while essentially identical, they are expressed in different language. Even today, there are many settings in which the Christian faith is considered absurd, meant only for the weak and unintelligent. Settings where other securities are preferred, like technology, money, success, power, or pleasure. This is as true, and perhaps truer, in the Trump administration, as it has been true for all of recorded human history. Particularly today, when those who show Christian compassion towards the poor, disadvantaged, and the immigrant are seen as weak and irrelevant, and truly absurd. Before he was elected Pope, Cardinal Prevost expressed his support of gun control and opposed Trump's immigration policies, as well as rejecting J.D. Vance's claim that St. Thomas Aquinas teaches us that we should love our family and immediate neighbors before we love our more distant neighbors. Christian love exhorts us to love all our neighbors as ourselves, not to pick and choose. And we'll quote from NCR, the National Catholic Reporter. The internet has been buzzing since J.D. Vance said during a Fox News interview, there's a Christian concept that you should love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens. And then after that, prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. Is J.D. Vance implying that Jesus is part of the far left, since it was Jesus who exhorted us, quoting Leviticus and Deuteronomy, that we should love our neighbor as ourselves? And NCR continues. The online debate has been split on whether this sentiment is biblical or not. Many Christians have rushed to defend this hierarchy, citing Timothy. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Now, the point wasn't about setting limits on love. It was about breaking them down, taking the gospel beyond familiar spaces and into contested ones. The real question is not whether love begins at home. It's what we do with it. How far we are willing to change ourselves and the world around us. NCR continues. Vance's argument echoes a medieval concept known as Ordo Amoris, the order of charity, often attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas. The idea is that love must be ranked, that a person rightly prioritizes their affections, with family on top. In some ways, it does sound practical, even reasonable. Love is not meant to be an abstraction, floating in ideals without real-world engagement. But the problem with this hierarchy is that it feeds the myth that some people are more deserving of our care than others. It's a framework that makes sense in a world governed by scarcity and fear, where protection comes at the expense of others. But Jesus never speaks of love as something to be rationed. He speaks of love as abundance, a table where there is enough for everyone. Since we let Pope Leo XIV speak for himself, so we should extend the same courtesy to St. Thomas Aquinas. In the Summa Theologica, he responds to many questions Christians ask about love or charity and whether there's an order in charity. And we plan to reflect on whether J.D. Vance is misquoting St. Thomas Aquinas. And this section of the Summa Theologica should be easily understood. And Pope Leo XIV, in his address to his fellow cardinals, says this: I would like us to renew together today our complete commitment to the path that the Universal Church has now followed for decades in the wake of the Second Vatican Council. Pope Francis masterfully and concretely set this forth in the apostolic exhortation Evangelii Gaudium, including the missionary role of the Church, attention to true worship and piety, loving care for the poor and rejected, and courageous dialogue with the contemporary world. Sensing myself called to continue in this same path, I chose to take the name Leo XIV. There are many reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo XIII, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. In our own day, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. And let's conclude with the closing of Pope Leo XIV's brief comments on his first Sunday homily. As a special greeting to the Church of Rome, together, we must look for ways to be a missionary church, a church that builds bridges and encourages dialogue, a church ever open and welcoming, like this square with its open arms, all those who are in need of our charity, our presence, our readiness to dialogue, and our love. Now we'll discuss the sources we used for this video. Now, Pope Leo XIV is quickly reassuring the Catholic Church that he intends to further the vision that Pope Francis had for the Church, and will emphasize social justice, just as Pope Leo XIII and many popes who succeeded him over the past century. And our sources were from the internet. And our recommended books would be our sources for the life and times of Pope Leo XIII and Rerum Novarum. And we're planning a series of videos on that. You'll see behind me many of the books on social justice, plus a book on the popes, which we'll use for Pope Leo XIII's reflection. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.